drive. Tatum the finish. It is banner 18. The mission commanded is mission accomplished.
What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of You Got Boston. Recording this on Sunday as the Celtics near the end of their preseason training camp. It's been a fun week at the Auerbach Center where we've seen the team is playing spike ball. They're playing at a fast pace. Peyton Pritchard has a gash on his neck that he says just came from practice because practice has been like war. The players have talked about how the pace is up, the intensity is up. Sam Cassell said this is the hardest training camp that he's seen in his 34 years around the NBA. And we've also gotten some good insight about how they expect to play a more aggressive form of defense this season, and basically just toe the line between playing more like the Thunder and like the Magic, teams that are borderline fouling, but just kind of get away with that physicality. So we've actually gotten a decent amount from just talking to guys throughout the week. Talked to Joe Mazzulla a bunch of times. We have all of the press conferences on CLNS Media on our YouTube channels. If you want to hear from Ugo or from Anthony Simons or from any of these guys, you can find those press conferences. We usually get 2 players a day at training camp, and we've had 4 days so far of camp. Monday is the last day of camp before we hit the road, and I'll be traveling for preseason. So I'll be in Memphis on Wednesday for the preseason opener. Really curious to see how things actually look on the court, how combinations of players fit together. And then Friday versus the Raptors in Toronto, and then back in Boston for the preseason home opener next Sunday, hosting Cleveland. So a lot of fun stuff coming up, but I did want to come on here today and do a little bit of a deeper dive into my one-on-one conversation with Chris Boucher, one of the new additions for the season. There's 5 guys that are new roster additions: Anthony Simons, Chris Boucher, Luka Garza, Josh Minot, and Hugo Gonzalez. So it actually feels like more than that, but it's actually 5 guys that are rostered players that are brand new. And I'm going to take some time to get to know all of them. Obviously, we know Hugo the best because he was at Summer League with us, so talked to him quite a few times. Hope to have something on Anthony Simons soon. But in the meantime, I did get about 15 minutes to chat with Chris Boucher after the 3rd day of training camp. And I didn't know him really at all. Obviously, I knew that he was on the Raptors. I've watched him play for the last 7 years that he's been in Toronto. And he's an interesting player because even though I've watched him play, when the Celtics signed him, I kind of thought, okay, this is going to address their logjam or their lack of logjam, their lack of options in the front court, with Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis, and Luke Kornet all gone. Now they got a guy who's 6'9", who can play some power forward. Maybe he can play some center. I don't know. He explained to me that he is more of a perimeter player. He plays forward. That's his preference, that he has been kind of pigeonholed as a center at times in his career. And then he's like, okay, you're 6'9", so it kind of hurts him because then he's a little bit of an undersized center, but he views himself best used as a perimeter player who can do a lot of the things that like Jason Tatum has done. That's how he kind of best views himself. Obviously, he's not Tatum, but that's more the position gap that he's going to fill, I think. So a couple things on Chris. Chris Boucher played at Oregon with Peyton Pritchard for 1 season, and he tore his ACL in his senior year, and so he went undrafted. I don't know that he would have been drafted if that didn't happen, but that certainly hurt his draft stock. He went undrafted, was with the Warriors for a quick second, got waived, and then has spent most of his NBA career with the Toronto Raptors. And he spent a lot of time in the G League as well, which I always love when there are guys that have like G League success experience because it's just a good presence to have on the roster. Like he was telling me, I talked to Amari Williams, who is on a 2-way contract after being drafted 46th overall by the Celtics this summer. And he's like, you're in a great spot for how young you are and the fact that you were just out of college. Like, it's good to have vets that have that background, not just guys that were drafted in the lottery, which there have historically been many Celtics players drafted in that range as well. But Chris Boucher knows what it's like to have to grind to keep your NBA career alive, kind of similar to like a Luke Kornet, Sam Hauser, those type of players. And so that's just one thing to know about him that he's bringing to this roster is that veteran poise experience. I've asked Pritchard about him a couple times. One, when I interviewed Pritchard a couple months ago in August at his one-on-one tournament, and I asked him like, okay, what should we expect with Chris Boucher? And he was like, he does not get tired. That is the number one thing I remember from college. He runs, he just does not tire, and we should use that, and we will use that this season. And so that was interesting to hear. And I asked Chris about that element, and he kind of laughed. And I think nobody wants to say like I never get tired, but he did say that his resting heart rate is a 36, which is wild. I don't know if people know much about resting heart rates, but the average adult is between a 60 and 100. If you're an NBA player, you might be in the 40s or 50s because professional athletes have kind of like trained themselves to get there. But he said that's his genetics. That's where he naturally is. And so there's a little bit of like naturally he's in really good shape and his cardio is phenomenal. And then there's also the fact that he has basically learned to push himself. I'm going to read this exact quote because I think this was a really telling quote when you think about the work ethic and what it takes to be an NBA player, particularly when you are not a lottery talent that just kind of not the lottery players don't work really hard, but when you are fighting every year to stay alive in this league. He said to me, I'm always thinking about, okay, if I'm tired now and I just push through, that means that the next time I get to that level, I won't be tired. So I'm always pushing myself. When I work out, I try not to drink water because I'm like, well, if I could go through without water, then with water it'd be a lot easier. So you can't just call a timeout to go with water in a game. And so he's an exceptionally hard worker. He's somebody that pushes the bounds of what is possible with his body and with his conditioning. And I think it's fit really well with what this camp has been. This camp has been very difficult by all accounts. And so that kind of aligns with what Peyton Pritchard told me that he remembers from him from college, is that this is a guy that just does not tire out. So I think you're going to see him be a high energy player. As far as whether he can stretch the floor, whether he can hit some threes, obviously that's been a critical part of the Celtics offense in recent years, and in particular under Joe Mazzulla. He shot around 36% from three last season, which was the second best mark of his career. I think a lot of it is going to come down to shot selection and whether he can get good looks. But he can definitely shoot the three ball, but he's also had some seasons where he's been more in like the 32% range. So we'll see how that pans out. We've been seeing him at practice shoot at Jaylen Brown's old basket. And he's getting up a ton of threes, as is Xavier Tillman, as is Neemias Queta. So I think it's just across the board. Everybody's practicing threes right now. But you can see that's a concerted effort for him. Just the programming, or not even a programming note, but just like for people that are curious, Tatum's old basket, where he has historically gotten his, post-practice work in, now Jaylen Brown's at that basket, and Jaylen Brown, that one's farther from the media. I would imagine that's a better basket. I don't know. But Chris Boucher now is at Jalen's old basket. So now when practice opens up for us, typically Jaylen Brown's on the far basket where Tatum usually has been, and Chris Boucher is right in front of us. So we have a great view of his workouts. That's the view that we used to have of Jaylen Brown. And yeah, it's been cool to see he's working with Emile Jefferson, Deshaun Butler, Tyler Lashbrook. Like the veteran assistant coaches on this team have been working with him quite a bit on it and getting clean threes and getting up a ton of threes. So we'll see how that skill translates this season. The thing that he told me that was interesting, because there was like a couple of different revelations from our conversation. One is just about him playing more of that forward role, and particularly at camp, he was talking about how he's been guarding Jaylen Brown and Derek White, and that's like something that he wants to be able to do, and he wants to have practice, and he wants the coaching staff to believe in him to do that. But the other thing that he said is that he really wanted to come to Boston because he knew there would be an on-court opportunity there for him. In Toronto, the last few years, he has gotten a lot of DNPs. Last year, he appeared in 50 games. And when he does play, he always contributed. Like, he averaged 10 points last year on, like, 48% shooting and 4.5 rebounds per game in 17 minutes a night. But then there would be a lot of games where he just wouldn't play. He didn't play in 32 games last year. So I think he wanted to go somewhere where he could impact winning, where he knew he would be needed. And the Celtics are that team right now. And that's because of all the offseason departures creates an opportunity for a number of guys. And I think we're going to see a lot of guys in this roster that have not had opportunities in years past get an opportunity this year. And just because you have an opportunity doesn't mean that you're going to play all season, because if you're not impactful or effective on the floor, then somebody else is going to get that chance. But I think to start, he is going to be one of the key rotation players on this roster. So that's part of why I wanted to pick his brain to begin the season. He said, I wanted to be somewhere where they wanted me. It's a lot easier when you come on a team like this where they're like, okay, we know we need you. And he said, I got a couple of skills that Tatum, Horford, and Porzingis has. If you put them all together, I got a couple of their skills. And so that part is interesting to me as well, is that he's going to kind of more play in those types of minutes. The other thing that I'll add is that it's very clear that he already has a good relationship with Joe Mazzulla, which seems to kind of just be the case across the board with all the new guys who have all gushed and raved about how close they feel with Joe and how he's taken concerted effort to connect with them off the floor and talk to them about things that aren't basketball. But this was reported on Media Day that Chris Boucher got baptized and Joe Mazzulla came with. And I thought that was a really cool anecdote. So I asked Chris a little bit more about that. And he said that he had been thinking about getting baptized for a long time. It's something that he had, especially the past year, like really it's been on his mind, but you have to be mentally prepared to do that. And so he said when he realized he was coming to Boston, it was going to be a new start. Up until now, he spent his entire career in Toronto, and he's from Montreal. So, he's been in Canada pretty much his whole professional career. He thought to himself, let me start the year out the right way, get closer to God. And he told Joe Mazzulla that, who obviously is very religious, talks about his faith quite a bit. And Joe, this is what he said to me. He said his eyes lit up. He was like, I want to come to that. And so the fun fact is that the baptism wasn't in Boston. It was in Montreal, his hometown. But Joe came, and Emile Jefferson, Celtics assistant coach and close friend of Tatum, former Duke teammate, made the trip with them as well. So Emile, Joe, and Chris Boucher all went to Montreal for the baptism, which meant a lot to Chris Boucher. And he mentioned that on media day as well. But he said, I've been in the league a long time. To see a coach that wants to be there for certain events like that is really special. It's rare to see that. And so he's not the only person that said this. Josh Minot said that he treats every guy differently, that he would run through a brick wall for Joe. Luka Garza said I'd run through a brick wall for Joe. Anthony Simon said, he's asking about the kids. He's dropping things off at my house. Ugo said we don't even talk about basketball. Like we talk about all the other things. So I think Joe recognized there are 5 new guys on this team, and he wants to have a deep level of mutual respect and connection with each of those guys. And that's gone a long way. And you can hear it in the way that they talk about him. I always say, we're not in the best seat to truly evaluate how a head coach is performing when we're not in the film room, we're not behind the scenes. We just don't have all of the access that would help inform that. And we have some access, and I'm incredibly grateful for the access and the blips that we do see. But I always defer to what the guys are saying. And you could tell that there is just an unwavering level of respect and off-court connection with Joe right now. And I think it's concerted. He went to Montreal for this. He went to Utah to speak on a panel with Neemias Queta. He went to visit Derek White in Colorado. He does these little things to connect with guys off the floor that go a long way. And he filled his offseason calendar with all of these visits. And he said, then that translates to he can coach you harder. And it's fine when he coaches you harder. You take that for what it is, and you take that actually positively, because if your coach comes in and barely has a relationship with you and is just screaming at you, then that does not land for most people. But this is what Chris told me. I'm reading the quote directly. When you're on the court and he talks to you and he tells you stuff, it makes you see it as, what? He's there for me. He wants me to get better. The day that he's going to stop saying stuff to me, I'm going to realize that, okay, I might be out of this place, because coaches are pretty smart. If they don't say nothing to you, then that means you're probably not out of there. If they start talking to you, telling you stuff, then that means that, yes, they're giving you shit, but they still need you. And so he views it as a good thing that Joe is a little hard on him. And Joe's been hard on a lot of guys over the years. I think that's sometimes something that fans don't realize, because Joe will never criticize players at the podium. He has made a point to do that. You could ask him about a guy who just went over 20 and had the worst defense in the world, and Joe will not speak negatively of players at the podium. That is just a rule for him. So we do know, though, that he's very hard on these guys behind closed doors. And I think Chris Boucher is one of those guys, and Chris Boucher takes it as a positive thing, because he knows that means that Joe Mazzulla not only knows that he needs him and that he's going to matter this upcoming season, but also it comes from a place of care, and that off-court trust has been established through things like coming with him for the baptism, which is really cool. So it was interesting to hear Chris Boucher's perspective as a veteran who has played under Nick Nurse, who has played for the Toronto Raptors team that won the championship in 2019. He was on that roster. He won G League MVP and Defensive Player of the Year that year. So he's done a lot in the G League, which I always think is cool. As some of you guys might know, I love the G League. But certainly feels like he's really finding a home in Boston, and this has been a really good fit for him. Culturally, he said he's been loving the steakhouses, the Haitian food. He didn't know there were so many Haitian and Creole people in Boston. And then he gets the opportunity to now kind of be around that as well, which he did not realize. So quick message from our friends over at PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. PrizePicks is a fun and simple experience where you can select your favorite players. For example, I really like watching Josh Allen play. I can decide if I want to do more or less than 270 pass yards, or whatever the player call-out projections are each week. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you should cash in. PrizePicks is also the best way to get action on sports in more than 40 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and accurate and secure. PrizePicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. So it's been really interesting to hear just how well the new guys are acclimating, and how they have really been buying into this new system. And obviously, it's training camp, it's media availabilities, like everything is painted in a positive light, and we'll see how things hold throughout the year. This is my second training camp covering the Celtics. It's my third season, but my first season, I would kind of work my way into access and availabilities and things. I wasn't at training camp. But it certainly feels like this training camp has just a lot more like war-like atmosphere. Like guys are battling, guys are been in the gym all summer. That's something else that's interesting, is that this season, like most of these players have been in the gym the entire summer. And I have another story on Celtics blog about the buy-in with Joe Mazzulla, which you can check out. But for the most part, like Baylor Shireman, Ugo Gonzalez, Jordan Walsh, all those guys that were on the summer league team, they've been in the gym the entire summer in Boston. Jason Tatum has been in the gym literally the entire time. Jaylen Brown also began his rehab and has been in Boston most of the summer. Derek White and Xavier Tillman both were in their hometowns for most of the summer, but both came back last month. And then you look at the two ways, they've all been in the building, the Exhibit 10 guys, like it has been a lot. And Baylor said that wasn't the case last year, because last year was fresh off a championship and then 3 guys were on the Olympic team. Like it just wasn't the same vibe. So, make of that what you will. I don't know if that's going to translate to now this team's better than we thought, or if it's just they're just developing. But that has been the MO, that this is our first week at camp. And so it feels like it's the first week of training camp. This is a different level of intensity. The pace is quicker. They're learning more things. Joe Mazulla is really at the head, whereas prior to that, it's more the assistant coaches taking the lead. But relationships have been formed, and a lot of work has been put in already. So that's been really cool. The one other thing that I wanted to mention is Jason Tatum and just like how around he has been at camp so far. Like, just for example, Friday he was at camp all morning, and Friday night I saw on Twitter that he was at Duke he was like a special guest, and I was like, okay, we won't see him at camp on Saturday because he's not doing the same stuff as the other guys, so he can work on his own schedule, and he has his own trainer and his own people that he can work with on a flexible schedule. So I assumed, okay, Saturday we're probably not going to see him. And next thing you know, not only is he there, but he was clearly going to go through a full workout on Saturday. He didn't do it in front of us, but he was kind of getting ready. And then as soon as media access ended and I went back upstairs and the curtains rise and then you can't see practice anymore, I heard like a bunch of like footwork and like just the classic like basketball noises. And I'm pretty sure it was Tatum because he was the last person that was still hadn't done his work. So Tatum is at everything. He is as present as he's ever been. I have a feeling he's going to travel with the team quite a bit. He might stay back sometimes just for his rehab, but for like the general sentiment that I now understand is that he is going to be around a lot this season. I also think he's coming back this year. It might be not in a super meaningful capacity, but I think that he is going to be back, just considering how early it seems like he's ahead of schedule. It seems like he's recovering well, but most importantly, it seems like he's just putting in a ridiculous amount of work, and it's only October. So does he come back to play a meaningful amount of games? I don't know, but it does seem like that's what he's working toward. And obviously he did his whole press tour where he explained that. And so if he has a date on the calendar and it's in March and he's cleared to play by then, and even if the Celtics are not in great positioning in the standings, or even if they are, I don't know if that's really going to matter. I think he's going to want to come back and just play those games, even if he's not 100% himself as far as his, conditioning or all of that. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's the sense I've gotten from camp this week. So if I think about like a week ago, we were a day away from media day. I'm recording this on Sunday. So I was like, I talked to a bunch of players over the summer. I talked to coaches. So it's not like I had no sense of where things were at, but being in the building all week, like I now have a better sense of where the team is at. And I do think that it's a little bit of a younger feeling than I expected. They're playing faster and more physical than I expected. And I guess I should have thought about this, but they were going to have to change their play style, just considering how different the roster is. And I think you're going to see a very different defense, a much more aggressive defense. Peyton Pritchard talked about this at practice on Friday or Saturday, that he's sometimes the guy that's pressuring the ball full court, but I think you're going to see a lot of players do that, and they're going to go deeper in the rotation. I don't think you're going to see a lot of games where only 2 or 3 players contribute off the bench. You might see a 10, 11-man rotation more. So I'm super excited to watch this first preseason game on Wednesday, because we're going to see how some of the stuff that we've been hearing about and getting a taste of actually comes to fruition. But it seems like it's been a really fun camp. Spirits are really high across the board. I am falling for all the propaganda around this team being better than probably they should be, just considering who's on the roster. So we'll see how it all pans out. Follow along. I'll have, as I mentioned, I'll be on the road, so I'm going to have coverage from different arenas, post-game coverage on the Garden Report as always. We have all the podcasts. We have the Big 3 podcast. We have the Garden Report after games. That's going to be back soon. I'm super excited for that. We go live after all the preseason games, regular season games. My podcast, You Got Boston, Celtics Beat, Cedric Maxwell. We got a lot of good stuff on the channel. And then also, if you want WNBA coverage, I'm covering both of these beats at the same time. WNBA finals are ongoing. We have a brand new WNBA channel called WNBA Today on CLNS. So if you do want a taste of like what is happening in the WNBA right now, we have videos both on what's happening on the court and off the court, because there's a lot of drama off the court as well. So that's it for today. Go check out my Chris Boucher story on Celtics blog if you want to read what I just kind of explained. And we'll have more to come in the following days. As always, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think about Celtics training camp from what you've heard. Sound off in the comments, and we'll be back with more coverage soon.